From family movie nights to binge-watching sessions on Netflix, movies are a pretty big part of our lives. Usually, we just think of them as things we consume for entertainment purposes. But as it turns out, they may be giving us more than just a good laugh or cry on a Friday night. If you've been watching movies about mental illness recently, you're probably seeing a story of stigma rather than an actual experience of mental illness. A study recently published in the Journal of Psychiatric Research found that audiences' moods dropped significantly after viewing 13 Reasons Why. Now, this was especially true for members of the audience who had histories of self-harm, suicidal thoughts, or recurring episodes of depression-like feelings of dejection and lacking motivation. While this study was focused on a newer piece of media, scholars have actually been wondering about the effects of mass media portrayals of mental illness for decades. Otto F. Wall published a literature review in 1992 that addressed the most common trends of mass media portrayals of mental illness. Time and time again, films, television shows, and the like contained erroneous portrayals of mental illness. Wall, Harper, Goodwin are just a few of the scholars who have found that improper diagnoses, exaggerated symptoms, simplified struggles, and even violent characters are common in movies. Both in Wall's 1992 paper and a 2004 article by Stout et al. Noted that the mass media is the main way people get their information about mental health. This means that even if the caricatures movies create are completely false, it may be what the general public believes to be true. I had to ask myself, if mental illness isn't a rarity, then why are accurate mentally ill characters so hard to come by? From what I could guess and what the literature told me, this is a problem of stigma. Thanks to some folks who have written great stuff on stigma already, I was able to make my own definition for my research. Stigma is the expectation of an inability to function, both in society and as a person, due to one's symptoms. Basically, stigma tells us that if you have a mental illness, you're screwed. Such a strong opinion seems to affect the way we make movies, but there's no reason we can't say movies affect stigma too. And that's exactly what I found in my research. I watched 12 movies from the past 10 years, including hits like Silver Linings Playbook, Shutter Island, and It's Kind of a Funny Story. Now, by watching movies, I actually mean that I was huddled over copious notes about how to understand these films in an analytical way, with the help of fancy things like Creswell's modified ground theory. It turns out, stigma limits the portrayal of mental illness according to strict narrative structures and oversimplified tropes. I also used those notes to find the most common character tropes, and then I created matrices, a cool way to say charts according to academics, to find even bigger patterns. It didn't end there though. I may have found what I wanted, but I had to figure out a way to say it. I may like to talk a lot, but that ended up being the hardest part of the research process. If you want to know more about what I found during my research, and just what we can do about this modern madness, check out the rest of the videos in the series. Maybe the way mental illness is shown isn't that great, but the movies themselves aren't too bad, for the most part. On that note, I'm gonna get back to my movie.